everybody! Welcome back to another ranking video, and the fifth and final event for Mario's March Madness. And today, I will finally be talking about... come on, this mod needs no introduction. You know it, I know it, most of you guys love it, I love it. Mario's Madness version 2. I am really excited to talk about this one. As I have been alluding to for quite some time now, this is hands down my favorite Mario Horror mod. Hell, this is up there as one of my top 10 favorite FNF mods of all time. Maybe even top 5 for that matter. And I know what some of y'all are gonna say.
Wow, what an original take, Daikin. It's not like everyone talks about this mod like it's the best thing in the world since sliced bread. Why don't you try being different and give us some new and unique takes for once?
Listen, I don't make these videos in an attempt to be different or quirky. I make them to simply express my thoughts on these mods and OSTs. Nothing more, nothing less. But hey, that's what you all clicked on this video for. You're here for my ranking, which means you're here to listen to my perspective on this soundtrack, aka my opinion, right? Right? Anyway, getting back on track, given how I seem to absolutely adore this mod, you can imagine that I am very fond of its soundtrack, and you would be very much correct in that assumption. For starters, out of the 28 songs in this mod, there are only 4 songs that I outright dislike, which means I consider all the remaining 24 as my favorites from this OST. So yeah, suffice to say, this video is going to be the most positive one I've made yet. In fact, let me put it to you in another way. At the time of this recording, Mario's Madness V2 is tied with a few other mods for having the second highest number of S-tier songs for me, being a total of 4. I know that may not seem like much to some people, but anyone that has seen my other videos and realized just how strict I am with S-tiers will realize that that's a pretty big deal. And yes, just to clarify, I am only going through the 27 songs that appear during the main campaign, as well as the one bonus song you unlock for completing the mod's story. Nothing from version 1, because I already made that video, not Forbidden Star, and not the old original versions of songs like Dictator, No Party, Overdue, etc. Just the 28 new songs that people think of when referring to the OST of version 2. So sit back, relax, and grab some snacks, because we're going to be here for a while. There's going to be all sorts of takes in this ranking, some really cold, some really hot. All I know is, there are going to be those that think I will have some songs ranked too low, while also saying I have others placed too high. Now then, with all that being said, it's time for the ranking to begin. And before we get into the absolute greatness of this mod, we have to go through those 4 not so desirable tracks. Yeah, just a heads up, while I can see the appeal that 2 certain songs may have, the other 2, well, let's just say they definitely fall short of the stellar quality that this soundtrack brings. So, with my preamble out of the way, all I have left to say is, let's go!
Select. Make sure to hold your breath. Once you reach the goal, a fight way worse than death. Select.
I know there weren't many people that were happy by placement of Watery Grave in the Classify video, and while my thoughts on the OST have not changed, if there is any solace I can give, it's that I find that track to be absolutely nowhere near as disappointing as Thalassophobia, because boy, oh boy, does this song have some issues. To get my one positive out of the way, I do really like this instrumental. For one, those watery sound effects that play throughout it are a cute detail that fits very well within the track. For obvious reasons, of course. Second, the usage of those specific bells gives off this idea that you're wandering in the middle of some haunted harbor while it's nighttime, complementing the song even further. And third, the way a majority of the instruments sound submerged, including some that use the N64 sound font, is a beautifully subtle addition that works absolute wonders here. I will admit, one extra positive I could give Thalassophobia is that some of the melodies are a bit of a bop. Unfortunately, they are ultimately ruined due to my biggest issue with the song, the chromatics. Starting with BF, he actually sounds quite good. In fact, if anything, he's absolutely carrying the singing parts here. It's just that there are times where he sounds a tad too quiet, especially during any duet he has with El Israel. Speaking of whom, his vocals are what completely killed the song for me. he sounds super muffled, which, yes, I know, it's like that because he's supposed to be underwater. I get that. It fits well thematically with the track. However, it doesn't work musically. All of his turns, especially during those big pop-offs, end up becoming extremely underwhelming and not clicking with me at all. And as you all should know by now, I hate it when chromatics have little to no impact during those more intense moments, and those reels are no exception. And guess what? That's gonna be a running trend with 2 of the other 3 songs I don't like from this mod. Yay! But don't worry, we have plenty of time before I get around to those entries, because my issues with Thalassophobia don't stop at just the vocals. On top of the lackluster singing parts, there's this pause that occurs during the final third of the track, and while I do like the organ that shows up during those 20 seconds, it ultimately leads to more of the same stuff that was already being played for the last 2 minutes, which means more of those same problems I mentioned earlier, which means more of me being completely disinterested in this utter slogfest of a song. Combine that with a runtime that spans to almost 4 minutes, and you get a track that just bores me to death. Honestly, the only reason Thalassophobia isn't an F tier is because of how much I adore the instrumental. Look, I get wanting to make something that fits with the concept of Luigi eternally drowning, but like I said before, it should not come at the expense of the actual music, because at that point, I'm not gonna care how well a tone or premise is executed due to me already being completely disengaged with the song. And the bizarre thing is, this is Mario's Madness V2, a mod that excels at integrating both story and theme into many of its tracks, so it's just a total letdown that they fumbled the bag for one of the more popular horror brews. And sadly, Thalassophobia isn't the only time in this OST where this issue occurs. Speaking of which...
It would be so awesome. It would be so cool.
Oh wow, so cool near the bottom of a Mario's Madness ranking, to the surprise of absolutely nobody. Yeah, from the moment I first heard this song, I knew it was a dud, and not much has changed since then. I think the big thing that keeps me from liking it is that it's extremely chill, and not in the way where it's a slow, calm song that I happen to find uninteresting, but more like it has so little energy that it's impossible for me to click with at all. And yes, I get that it's not trying to be the most bombastic thing in this soundtrack, rather it's imitating the style of an actual Nintendo Direct, but that is literally all this track has going for it. The instrumental definitely sounds like something that would be made by Nintendo for one of their presentations, but that doesn't necessarily make it enjoyable to listen to. Admittedly, Chris Pratt's chromatic is really good and has some nice moments to shine, but it's definitely not used to its greatest potential due to these incredibly boring melodies. Speaking of which, all of these singing parts just blend together for me. Like I mentioned before, they're not energetic enough to truly stand out, but they're also not calm or slow enough for me to vibe with them either. In other words, this whole song is just a lose-lose situation. Honestly, I think the only reason this is placing higher than Thalassophobia is solely because it's an entire minute shorter, which means it's less of a chore to sit through. Maybe if So Cool didn't feel the need to limit itself musically for the sake of theme, we could have gotten something that would have made for a decent bop. But alas, all we got instead was a song that easily gets outshined by over 90% of this OST.
Okay. Oh, give.
Well, would you look at that? Our first remaster of the list, and the only one that I ended up not liking. Yeah, while this version of Race Traders is indeed a step up from the original, it's still not enough for me to now get enjoyment out of it. Starting with the melodies, they are practically the same as they were in version 1. Yeah, so the remix of this mod kind of fall into 2 different categories. Some are songs that got reworked entirely, while others essentially remained the same as before, but certain aspects about them had some much needed improvements. This one falls more into the latter, which means I'm still not personally interested in any of the turns here, even if I can see the appeal they may have for others. Granted, the ending did get extended a bit, which is a very nice addition, though I wish it was a little longer since the track is still under 2 minutes, even if ever so slightly. Then there's the instrumental. It still carries that fun, competitive feel of its predecessor, but it now includes some Mario Kart sound fonts as well, being a nice add-on that I not only appreciate, but it gives the song some form of an identity that was definitely lacking in the original. And then there's... Alright, I think I've stalled for long enough. I need to talk about the big change this song got, that being the new chromatic for Racist Mario. Sure, it fits better with Mario's voice from the original video, and I think it's an overall improvement over the vocals from V1, but not by a huge margin. All of his singing parts now have no impact, which causes me to click for the melodies even less than before. While they may no longer be inconsistent with their quality like in the Legacy version, they are now just consistently underwhelming throughout the entire song. And to make things worse, that problem I had with the mixing back in version 1 is still prevalent here, which means both Mario and BF are still fighting with the instrumental to remain as audible as possible. Overall, I do agree with people that say this version of Race Traders is better than the one from 2 years prior. However, it's honestly not that crazy of a glow up, and it still has its fair share of problems.
I don't even think you really know what a bad day is.
And here we have my first hot take of the video. Yeah, I'm not too big on Bad Day. I understand that it has a plethora of fans, and while I can definitely see the appeal, this song is just not my cup of tea. That being said, I do actually have quite a few praises for this one, so let me go through all of those first. Starting with the instrumental, I wholeheartedly adore it. The Super Mario World sound fonts are fantastic, and I love hearing the renditions of both the overworld theme from that game, as well as levels from Avicii. They are already both amazing tracks on their own, but the fact that it's paying homage to that one remix that combined the two of them is a very heartwarming detail that I get tons of nostalgia from. The melodies are no slouch either. They're all incredibly catchy, exuding so much fun and energy that I can absolutely see myself jamming to them. That reference to Good Feeling is another satisfying inclusion that I can't help but smile at. Now, you would think that with all these wonderful aspects that I love about Bad Day, it would be an easy favorite of mine. Yet, it's not, and for the longest time, I could never put my finger on as to why. But then, I found out what the problem was. Once again, it's the chromatics, and it involves both characters this time. Starting with Boyfriend, I do not like the voice they gave him in this song. It's way too squeaky for my liking, and combine it with the Bit Crush filter, it comes off as a bit too irritating for me. I feel like the regular BF chromatic would have benefited him here a lot more. And then there's the Bit Crush itself, which makes both characters sound way worse. It's like the two have something lodged in their throats, which leads to none of their singing parts hitting anywhere near as hard as they would if their vocals were a lot more crisp. Again, I completely get why others love this song, but these chromatics really tank my enjoyment of it. Well, to end this entry off on a good note, I will admit that the key change at the end is amazing. It takes nearly everything I loved about the song and makes it all the better, almost having this party-like feel that is so full of life and happy vibes. All in all, Bad Day has a lot going for it. It's just brought down by that one glaring issue. And now we are on to my favorites of this mod, starting with Apparition version 2. Like the new Race Traders, this is another remaster that essentially remained the same in terms of their melodic structure, but got some, as I like to call it, quality of life changes. If you recall from my V1 ranking, the two portions of the original Apparition that I had problems with were the beginning before the Endless Staircase reference in the instrumental, and the BF solo at the end. In this version, the new instruments, which are much clearer and more pronounced, make the beginning feel a lot more full, and Wario's new vocals better complement that lower intensity the start of the song has. But, in all honesty, things only really start getting better once we do get to that iconic stairs motif. Now it's time to truly dive into what makes the two big changes to this track so great. First off, the instrumental gets rid of a lot of the emptiness of the old version, and still carries that N64 sound font that I know and love. Meanwhile, Wario's new chromatic is amazing, now becoming as smooth as butter during the second half. Like, I already loved how he hit those long notes back in V1, but this version makes them sound heavenly! Lastly, the BF solo, while still present, feels a lot more earned with the inclusion of extra instruments that allow the part to have some much needed intensity, and Wario's laugh as he fades away is a nice add-on as well. Overall, while this version didn't do too much that was new, it was still a great improvement nonetheless.
What's good? The name is Luigi. I'm so scared, I'ma move to Fiji. I'm a little bitch, motherfucker, hee.
Just a quick reminder, regardless of whatever placement the top 24 songs get in this ranking, at the end of the day, I still see them all as amazing tracks. I say this because I know there are plenty of people that are going to be mad that Alone version 2 is this low. Just hear me out for a second before you all start gathering your pitchforks. Make no mistake, this is easily one of the greatest glow-ups to ever occur in all of FNF. Beta Luigi sounds so much better than in version 1, his voice perfectly capturing that heartbroken, wailing feel the song is obviously trying to go for. There are so many times where he sings his heart out and you can hear the anguish and remorse in his vocals, making all of his turns incredibly beautiful to listen to. This is the kind of emotion that songs like Melancholy were lacking. As for BF, that ghostly effect added onto his chromatic is great, giving the track a haunting atmosphere that complements the somber mood of this glorious remaster. The improvements given to the melodies here are a night and day difference compared to how they were in the Legacy version. The moment I heard Luigi humming that iconic motif from Luigi's Mansion, I knew I was going to be in for an incredible treat. I absolutely adore that theme from the original game, so I was ecstatic whenever it was referenced in the song. The rest of the original melodies are no slouch either. Not only are they super compatible with the track's slower tempo, not only do they match well with the depressive tone of Alone, but they also sound like something that would fit right at home with the official game's OST. The instrumental is astronomically better, even incorporating actual sound fonts from Luigi's Mansion, which was the exact thing I wanted from this song ever since the release of version 1. That little jingle reference when the mansion lights up before the two characters pop off always puts an immediate smile on my face. And of course, I can't not talk about the lyrical segment when Beta Mario shows up. It's a short moment, but has such a nice flow and rhythm, and the lyrics themselves ooze of so much sadness, to where I can't help but feel bad for the two brothers and their predicament. Also, this ending is just incredible. The way the emotional energy of the track begins to wind down with Luigi humming the game's motif once more creates this beautiful sense of the song coming full circle. Also, I must say, Alone easily has my favorite ending note out of this entire OST. I know that may seem like a really niche thing to say, but I had to mention it. It works so well as this final exertion from Luigi, acting as his one last thing he can force himself to utter before going back to wallowing in his lonesome, while musically allowing the song to fade out in a more fluid fashion. One last thing, the pacing of this track is perfect. Despite having a runtime of 4.5 minutes, it feels way shorter, never once giving off this idea that it's dragging itself out at any point. Now, I know a lot of you are probably asking right now, after all the praise I gave this song, how the hell did it still end up ranking this low on the list? Well, it's less of a case of the track having issues, and simply more due to personal preference. Alone by nature is a much calmer, slower song, and while that in and of itself is not a bad thing, I can't deny that this style of music isn't always my favorite, as I tend to gravitate to the faster paced, energy-filled tracks, which makes up most of this OST. And since I already love over 85% of said soundtrack, Alone is kind of put in a position where it's bound to be pushed down to the lower ends of this ranking. Make no mistake, this remake is utterly fantastic, and I can definitely see why plenty of people would put in their top 10 of this mod, even the top 5 for that matter. I just simply find the other songs to be more appealing to me.
Yeah. It's a me. Ooh, yeah.
And going from one stellar glow up to another, we have It's a Me version 2. Like Alone, the facelift this song got was extraordinary. I don't know what kind of voodoo magic was performed here, but everything that made V1 not work at all now perfectly complements each other, creating a phenomenal opener that starts this OST off with a bang. For starters, all of the melodies that were taken from the Legacy version are utilized to a much better fashion, being in a faster tempo that keeps the notes from feeling too spaced out, overall having an excellent flow that perfectly eases you into the mod. The new chromatic for Super Horror Mario is a vast upgrade from the old one. It finally allows him to resemble Mario's voice without losing any of the intimidation the song is trying to have, not to mention the fact it gives all of his singing parts that much needed oomph. Lastly, the new instrumental is insanely clean. The live recorded guitar does absolute wonders for this song, whether it be doing something like backing up the vocal melodies and giving some of the notes that extra impact to make them truly hit hard, or by working in tandem with that xylophone to create this amazing fade-in during the opening that always gets me pumped up for the rest of the track. There are so many amazing moments in this version, including this one small part where it gets a little calm, but there is still this sense of unease that remains prevalent throughout it. Matter of fact, I just love how tense and sinister the song is overall. It really ties in well with the whole tone of the mod's story. This is more than just a regular rap battle, and even more than it being against some evil character. BF and GF's lives are very much at stake here. But you want to know the crazy thing about It's a Me? Everything I mentioned so far was in regards to the first 2 minutes of the song. I haven't even gone to the ending stretch yet. Just the startup alone is incredible. The timer sound effect playing as Mario laughs is perfect, and the way the instrumental builds back up with those guitar riffs as he starts popping off puts a huge smile on my face. The whole tone of the song I mentioned earlier just increases tenfold, especially when M acts as the backing chorus to BF's primary motif, before the two characters converge into this duet as the track builds into the ultimate climax, containing nothing but super hype melodies as Mario sounds at his absolute best. Seriously, those long notes during that section hit just right! And him singing a slowed down version of the Starman theme immediately afterwards is another satisfying detail. The way the instrumental includes sound fonts from actual Mario songs is a fantastic touch, especially the inclusion of the ba ba samples from the new Soup games, which also serve as this really creative stand-in for a choir. That fade out at the end, combined with BF's final note, makes for a very chilling closure to the song. Had all of It's a Me been like this entire final section, it would have been so much higher on this list. But hey, that goes to show you just how great the rest of these songs are, and just how much I strongly adore this mod. And we're not even at the top 20 yet.
Eat this, you fucking bitch!
Last Course. Ooh, I really enjoy this one. This is like if you were to take Fight or Flight and Forestall Desire from Versus Sonic.exe, make them actually good, mix them together, sprinkle in some Mario-style goodness, and then you get this song. The instrumental is such an earworm. Not only do I adore the subtle Super Mario World sound fonts used here, including the use of Yoshi drum beats, but I love how the flutes make the track sound super eerie and alien, while not bordering on the super scary, ominous side, but rather leaning into a more uncanny kind of tone. The melodies are really cool as well. There is a perfect blend of quick rhythms and longer notes, which allows for the singing parts to stick and resonate in several different ways. I like how there are multiple super brief pauses during one part of the song, in between when Turmoil and Galuma BF sing, allowing the instruments to push the energy of the track without making it lose its tension. Speaking of the two, I think both of their chromatics are quite good. I've always found BF's vocals here to be super adorable, and funnily enough, I'd say it works well within the overall tone of the song, acting as a slimmer of innocence that desperately needs to escape this frightful situation. Meanwhile, Turmoil's scratchy voice, given how much lower its pitch is compared to everything else in this track, really adds to that creepy, suspenseful feeling. Overall, I think this is a really nice song, one that I find to be a bit of an overlooked gem at times. I know I don't have this one ranked high myself, but that's less to do with this track having problems, and more of a case of the other entries doing stuff that I prefer over the things that Last Course does here.
This ends for all of us.
Okay, first thing first, I have to ask this. Why did so many people think I was referring to the end of E2 when doing the polls for this OST? You know, one would think that the version I'm talking about would be the one that, oh, I don't know, is in the freaking mod! Anyway, the end was a song that probably took the longest time for me to warm up to out of all my favorites. I think the reason why was because at first glance, it seemed like this track isn't really doing much to stand out in a unique way. For what is the penultimate song of the main story, it felt a bit too underwhelming. But then I realized that's kind of the point. The end is essentially anything but, being what is basically a false finale, a hollow victory if you will. You aren't meant to feel joy for making it this far. In a way, it symbolizes and foreshadows the actual ending of this mod's story. But more on that later. Once I understood this, I began to appreciate it much more. That being said, what puts this song as high as it is are the things it does musically. I love Costume's chromatic, it's nice and deep, and it sounds so malicious, lacking any color, with all that remains is this intensity in his voice. Combined with the really fast and catchy melodies, he ends up sounding incredible. And given how much deeper his vocals are compared to BF's, it creates this really nice contrast whenever they duet. I also adore this instrumental. The square synth makes it sound so bleak, matching well with the aforementioned tone of the song. I love a hard-hitting bass, and the one used here has the impact of a speeding semi-truck, and was probably the driving force what made me click with this track so much. I will admit though, I don't care that much for this ending. It doesn't really carry any of the positives of the song that I mentioned, the melodies are a tad messier, and I'm not a fan of how the instrumental just immediately stops as BF sings his final note. I just feel that the lack of a wind down or fade out makes the track end a bit too prematurely. But yeah, in summary, The End is a great song, and I enjoy the things it has to offer. I just wish it did a bit more. And for those that are wondering, yes, I do vastly prefer V2 over V1. It expands on all the great things about the original version, it fixes nearly all of my problems, and it adds that special flair that its predecessor was in dire need of. But more on that later whenever we get the deluxe update for this mod.
Granddad, Granddad,
Granddad, Granddad, Granddad, Granddad, Granddad,
Granddad, Granddad, Granddad, Granddad, Granddad, Granddad,
He's back.
You know how in my Monday Night Massacre ranking I praised the Grand Old Time for its Mimi charm and for the many references featured in it? Well, Nourishing Blood takes those pros and amps them up to the max. This whole song is just oodles of fun and good vibes the whole way through. There was no way I was not going to love this one. Granddad's chromatic is perfect. Having his vocals being sampled from Vinesauce Joel was a genius decision, and they sound super smooth with these melodies. The instrumental further enforces that amazing energy of the song. The chiptune combined with the various sound effects pays great homage to the classic games that this iconic bootleg is based on, giving me an immense amount of nostalgia that I can't help but cherish. I always find myself actively vibing whenever I hear Peanut Butter Jelly Time playing in the instrumental, and it just adds to the overall happiness I get from this track. But of course, just like in A Grand Old Time, the easily best aspect of this song are the melodies. All of the original rhythms here are incredibly bouncy and catchy on their own, but that is nothing compared to these references. You obviously have the ever iconic Granddad theme playing throughout it, sounding as grand as ever, but there are also so many other various motifs sprinkled in as well, and you all know damn well that as a big reference guy I was going to love every second of their inclusion, even if Nourishing Blood does feel a bit too over-reliant on them. But to be honest, nothing, and I do mean nothing, comes even remotely close to the greatness that occurs when the track transforms into the actual bootleg game, and both characters start singing references to shooting stars and Red Eye Circulation as Space Jam plays in the instrumental. It just puts the absolute biggest smile on my face, truly being the pinnacle of utter joy that this song offers. All in all, while Nourishing Blood may not be the most bombastic song with the biggest presentation out there, and is mostly comprised of various musical rips rather than focusing on more original melodies, it still has this endearing charm that always makes me happy while listening to it, and I can't force myself to put it any lower on this list.
Now it's time for a new era. An era of Luigi. It's Luigi time!
I gotta say, I'm quite surprised at the change in perception that people had with this one. Back when the update first released, you didn't see a lot of fans give this song the credit it deserved. Nowadays, however, many would consider it as one of, if not the best track from Woodland of Lies. And while I certainly don't share that strong of a sentiment myself, the greatness of Oh God No is nothing to scoff at. Both chromatics do an excellent job at conveying a certain type of emotion befitting of the situation at hand. Mario's vocals being sampled from his lines in the Super Show was a genius decision, and they definitely help him come across as being shocked and betrayed by Luigi's actions. Speaking of whom, I love how confident he sounds. It really shows that he's ready and willing to do anything to finally step out of his brother's shadow, even if it means turning on him without a second thought. The melodies in this one are very interesting. A majority of Oh God No is made up of these duets, which leads to it sounding like a genuine argument, with both brothers trying to talk over each other. But interestingly enough, there's not a single time where the song sounds messy or incoherent because of this, which I find to be very impressive. And then there's the instrumental, which does absolute wonders for this track. The Super Mario World sound fonts are perfect and much appreciated for obvious reasons, but I want to focus more on how flexible it is when capturing the drama behind this scene. There are points in the song where it gets soft, becoming sad and emotional, and other times where it gets intense, especially during the final stretch when both Plumber's singing parts sound incredibly heated. All of these components come together during what is easily the biggest highlight of the track, the silhouette section. The way the instrumental gets noticeably quieter as both characters start singing the overworld motif helps convey this idea of how the two have completely lost the point of why they were here. It was never about who was the superior Mario brother. Rather, it was about saving a princess from a monstrous tyrant. But sadly, their feud got in the way of all of that. The fact you can hear Mario say, "Because you're my brother" in the instrumental, with Luigi retorting, "You're no longer my brother," just further adds to the overall heartbreak of this tragic conflict. Now, with all of that said, if there was one issue I have with this song, it would be the ending. After that incredible delivery of the "Why won't you die" line, the two brothers just have one more intense duet before Luigi yells "I hate you" and the track ends. The way this singular turn is sandwiched in between these two voice lines makes it feel like a last minute addition. I strongly believe this final portion should have been extended a bit, so that there's more of a lasting impact that properly closes out this amazing song. Overall, Oh God No is a fantastic track, and I'm so glad that people are coming around to appreciate its shockingly good quality.
Mario, the lovable plumber and savior of the Mushroom Kingdom. Or is he?
What? Dictator not in the top 10? Of course not, why would it be? Look, jokes aside, while I do like this song, I never once thought it was even remotely comparable to the true MVPs of this mod, like how practically everyone else says it does. That being said, this is still a favorite of mine, and there are things that I like about it. For starters, the chromatic for Secret Histories Mario is really nice, having this lower pitch that lines up well with the professional and formal nature of the character. As for the melodies, I adore the swing-like style of each of the turns. It's not my favorite usage of it in this mod, but it's still swing, I'm gonna love it all the same. Additionally, like Oh God No, this song is mostly composed of duets, and this is where the chromatics truly shine. The deeper, authoritative tone of Mario's voice, when paired with BF's higher-pitched vocals, creates a great contrast that makes it sound like the corrupt businessman is trying to silence boyfriend and drown out his pleas for mercy. The jazziness of the instrumental is incredibly catchy, giving off this business-like vibe, but more in a way that seems befitting of a mafia boss, which works well given the predicament BF and GF are in. Now, with all of that said, I do have a few small gripes with this song. For starters, while it's not super long or anything, this pause that occurs in the middle of the track accomplishes pretty much nothing aside from bringing the amazing flow and energy of the vocal melodies to a complete stop for seemingly no reason. Next, alright, I think it's time to talk about the beat drop. It's good, however, I strongly disagree with the notion that this is one of, if not the best beat drops in all of FNF. I've heard way better ones both before and after the release of Dictator. It starts off incredibly strong, but the second half just feels tacked on, lacking any sort of smooth transition from the first part. But yeah, hopefully this helped explain why this track is ranking lower than where many other people would put it, cause, you know, it's not like fans of this song love Dictator so much they're willing to rig my polls in order to make it win, which would in turn damage the integrity of said polls and how they're meant to be a way for me to connect with my community, as well as having a ruinous effect on the actual video, right? Right?
Chance to begin with. Not you, nor Super Mario.
No Hope is quite easily the most underrated song in this entire mod, and I will not take that back. While it's not perfect, and I can see why it gets frequently overlooked at times, I've seen so many people put this one near the bottom of their list, and I never understood why. To get the elephant in the room out of the way first, Devil Mario's chromatic. I love it! It's deep, it's gruff, it's right up my alley. Additionally, Mario sounds especially amazing anytime he hits those high notes or slides. Speaking of which, I love the structure of the melodies and the overall flow they have in the song. It starts off by building up energy in the beginning, creating so much hype for what is to come, before letting it loose in this incredibly satisfying pop-off. And even when it ends, the track still retains this suspenseful tone, having me completely hooked the whole way through. I will admit, there are a few issues I have with the beat drop. Not only is it too short, not only does it show up really early into the song, but by the time it's done, there's still another half of the track left. Again, I do like what comes afterwards, but I would be lying if I said No Hope wouldn't have been even better if that pop-off was either extended or saved for later. Hell, even adding a second beat drop during the final third would have definitely benefited it as well. Lastly, this instrumental is something else. Friedrich easily has the best instrumentation in this entire mod. The violins, the snares, the heavenly vocalization of the choir, those haunting chants, the freaking gong when the track starts getting intense. Ignoring the fact that I adore this glorious combination, it really captures this idea of going to war, facing down the enemy on the field of battle. And I know that Friedrich didn't know about Power Star before making No Hope, but in all honesty, the inclusions of that rock guitar and bass, in addition to that amazing reference to the Mario World Castle theme, just exudes of that charm most Mario animations during the early 2000s gave off, which I can't help but feel nostalgic for. You guys understand now why I think No Hope deserves more love? Sure, it's not perfect and it could definitely use some tweaking, but man does it have so much stuff to it that I wholeheartedly adore to no end.
Balls. Mario's castle is missing a wall. Since when did he have a castle at all? But whatever, dude, now he's on the move.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Golden Land version 2. This is another remaster that didn't get any crazy changes like how Alone or It's a Me did, but still had some improvements made nonetheless. Starting with the Faker portion, it's still just as amazing as before. The reference to Mario Land 2's main theme is still as great as it was in version 1, the instrumental still carries that innocent Game Boy vibe that I loved, but to an even greater degree, and both GB and BF's chromatics sound incredibly smooth, especially with the way their voices slide when singing those long notes before the transition happens. But then we get to GB's transformation, where my thoughts on the song become a bit more interesting. The melodies remain essentially unchanged from their legacy counterpart, which means I enjoy them here just as much as I did back then. The fast tempo still makes it turn super catchy and energetic, causing me to still jam out in my chair whenever I listen to this section. While the guitar is not as prominent in the instrumental as before, it still carries that epic, serious tone of the original, and some of the new additions, such as that stellar sounding piano, help reinforce that fun intensity that made me click with this track to begin with. Additionally, there is one part of this instrumental that straight up reminds me of the Dark Castle theme from Kirby's Dream Land 2, which is a song I wholeheartedly adore. Then we have the chromatics. I forgot to mention this in my ranking of the version 1 songs, but there is this one part in the OG Golden Land where BF becomes so insanely quiet to where he's basically inaudible, and thankfully that was fixed here, on top of him already sounding much better overall. But then there's GB, where my biggest issue with the remaster comes in. The deeper pitch combined with the bit crush makes him sound a lot more muffled than before. It's not the worst thing ever, and it's nowhere near as bad as Thalassophobia, but I won't deny that it kinda sucks how his notes no longer have that really nice oomph to them like in the Legacy Edition. In short, while Golden Land V2 is a definite improvement over the old one, I wouldn't call it a massive upgrade, as there are still some aspects about it that leave a bit more to be desired. I know practically everyone watching this is not going to be happy that I put Starman Slaughter this low. Look, give me a chance to explain myself before y'all start spewing hate in the comments and live chat. Don't get me wrong, I still really like the song, however I do have some gripes with it, but we'll get there when we get there. To start, this first phase is an excellent opener. Super Horror Mario is easily at his best in this track. The intensity of his voice, in tangent with the amazing rock instrumental, really conveys the idea that, while this is still a game to him, he is no longer going easy on BF. The melodies reinforce this feeling, being much more hectic than the ones in It's a Me. And then John Dick shows up! This entire section is just super fun and catchy. His chromatic just being the trumpet is not only really funny, but oh my lord, it sounds incredible, adding more to that notion that Mario is still playing around. I also just love how a xylophone now plays in the instrumental. I adore whenever songs add those kinds of instruments for any skeletal-like characters. It's just a super charming detail. And when both opponents start harmonizing together, the impact of the notes just hit like a truck and builds so much hype that I can't help but smile at it. But just when Mario is about to continue, Yoshi.exe suddenly drops in with Super Horror Peach following suit and... Alright, this is where my biggest problem with the song shows up. Positives first, the instrumental during this phase is pure and utter perfection. The way the instrumental loses its intensity and becomes daintier, reflecting Peach's character and even including a rendition of Inside the Castle Walls, right before adding those Super Mario World drum beats when Yoshi starts singing, are all fantastic details that makes this part absolutely phenomenal. But the cherry on top? The choir bells. They sound immaculate! Additionally, Yoshi.exe is utilized expertly here. His chromatic is honestly one of the better ones in this mod, fitting him to the T, and I love how he solely acts as a backing singer for both BF and Peach. That being said, on the topic of the princess, that's where my issues with this section lie. Now, I like the idea they had for Chromatic, being a more demonic sounding version of Toadstool, but aside from her first turn, the effects on her voice makes all of her melodies sound very muddled, especially when combining them with the godlike instrumental in Yoshi's parts. Well, after what is easily the weakest section of the song for me, we get to what is easily my favorite phase, with the return of Mario. It takes everything that I love about Starman Slaughter and rolls it all up into one amazing ending. From the reprisal of the track's beginning turn, to the insanely catchy melodies from the first two sections, to those glorious choir bells from the previous portion, to the stellar Mario chromatic that now sounds so full of pain, shame, and pure rage. It really does encapsulate this idea that after this humiliation, the Twisted Plumber's game is now ruined and he's done fooling around. My only problem with this section? It's so freaking short! Why is it less than a minute long? I just want more, dang it! Well, in any case, Starman Slaughter is a wonderful song, through and through. I totally get the hype for this one, and why it's considered to be one of, if not the best track in the mod. It's just that, when you love a vast majority of this OST, and to an insane degree as I do, it causes songs having just one or two issues, even the slightest of nitpicks, to be all the more detrimental to their ranking.
Don't keep things off the ground.
Who the fuck are you talking to? There's no one there!
Spoilers for the rest of this list, but practically every Warp Zone has at least one song that managed to make it into the top 10. Well, all but one, that being Irregularity Isle. To be honest though, this world was never going to get farther than any of the others. When your roster consists of only 3 songs and one of them is freaking so cool, it was surely going to be an uphill battle when competing against the other areas of this mod. I will say this though, for as short-lived as this world was, it surely ended itself off with a bang. And that, my friends, is Mario Singing Game Rhythm 9. This song is the literal definition of an earworm. Everything about it just evokes this feeling of happiness that then prompts you to want to jam out to it. So Mario's chromatic is so full of life, it's infectious and inviting, and Pika Friend's vocals add even more to the innocent and fun nature of the track. The way the two hit those high notes is angelic, especially during the main motif. The instrumental also adds this nostalgic charm to the song, furthering my enjoyment of it. It is the perfect blend of the Mario and Sonic style. It's like if you took the catchy rhythms and patterns of official Mario music and put it in the Sega Genesis sound font. And speaking of the Mega Drive styled instruments, this is easily my favorite implementation of them in all of FNF. And don't think I forgot about that pause that has that awesome rendition of the iconic 1-1 theme. Yeah, I know it's not the most unique reference seen in this mod, but I can't help having a massive smile on my face whenever it plays. But the absolute best aspect about the song is by far the melodies. Why, you may ask? Simple. It's swing! I love swing! Every turn is so full of vigor and vitality. The back and forth between both characters, as well as the duets, carry this excellent flow that allows the energy of the track to pass through seamlessly during the entire 3.5-minute runtime. This is one of a handful of songs where I'm so tempted to just get up from my seat and dance to it. That just goes to show you just how addicting swing is, and why I love this style so damn much. Honestly, there's only one real gripe I have with this song: the key change. Don't get me wrong, it's really good and it still retains practically everything that I already love about the track. It's just that I kind of prefer it when it's in that A sharp minor key during the first 2.5 minutes before the change happens, as it really captures that joyful tone a lot better in my opinion. In any case, Mario's singing game Rhythm 9 is an absolute blast of a song, and is hands down the highlight of Irregularity Isle.
The second you get happy in this game, the second you feel any sort of joy from a win, they strip it away by throwing MX at you.
I know a lot of people are not going to be happy with this entry, not because I ranked Demise too low, no, rather because I ranked it too high on this list. But to be honest, I don't care. This is easily one of the most overhated songs in this mod. Yeah, I know that the general issue that most people have with this track is that it's too spammy, but truth be told, I would hardly call this spam. There are actual discernible melodies in this song, they're just really fast. Now if you want real spam, anyway, now with that cleared up, time for my thoughts on Demise. Since I'm already on the topic of the melodies, I'll say that, yeah, I really like them. The faster tempo adds a very befitting franticness to the song, the energy and intensity of the track is at an all-time high throughout its entire duration, and it complements MX's voice very well. I'll talk more about his chromatic later, but the force behind his vocals is still present here, and man, it does wonders for Demise. Him constantly singing these fast rhythms, in addition to him laughing and screaming like a maniac, creates this feeling of overwhelming pressure and desperate need of escape. That hopeless tone in the instrumental really encapsulates just how dire your situation is after the events of Power Down, all while still retaining that retro Mario aesthetic. That alarm that plays during the more hectic moments is the cherry on top of the already extreme intensity of the song. But with all of that said, there is one other issue that people have with Demise that I too have gripes with. That being the underground section. This turn with the screaming atonal just sucks. It's not fun to listen to, it completely kills the tone of the song, and the instrumental just doesn't exist for some reason. Everything about this moment was essentially one big bad decision to include. That being said, the track does immediately pick itself back up from that fumble with this amazing chain of events, starting with the reference to the run motif from the original PC port, to the silhouette section with that glorious duet, to that short moment where BF sounds like he's pleading for his life, to the part where MX falls in the giant gap as boyfriend gets saved by girlfriend, the soft piano playing when it's revealed that she's okay and the two lovebirds are seemingly having a small respite, to the final fake-out segment where BF has to give it his all to escape this cursed level so as to not meet his demise at the hands of this hulking behemoth. The way all these events play out one after another like clockwork is genuinely impressive, truly being a bombastic end to one of the most chaotic tracks in this mod. While I can understand why Demise isn't everyone's cup of tea, I feel that the dislike for it goes a bit too overboard, especially since there are still many great aspects to be had in this song. Though, I will say, there is one other track that I feel gets a lot of unnecessary hate, even more than this one. But we'll get there when we get there. From one chaotic track to another, we have Dark Forest. I'm kind of disappointed with how poorly this one did during the polls. Considering how this is my second favorite song from Woodland of Lies, I was hoping that it would have made it past the first round. So I was very shocked at how it had substantially fewer votes than both Apparition and Last Course. The franticness of the melodies here not only make them a banger, but they give Coronation Day Peach a rather intimidating presence, befitting for someone that serves as the final opponent in Woodland of Lies. And yeah, I know what people are gonna say,
this doesn't fit Coronation Day Peach!
To which I say, you're dead wrong! While sure, it doesn't fit in a general surface level sense, in terms of the specific moment in the ROM hack that the track is clearly based on, this tone works very well in her favor. Speaking of the Forest King, her chromatic is great. I love how it resembles Peach's voice, but it's completely deprived of all its warmth, showing how the princess is just an empty husk of her former self. Those high notes she hits are super haunting, and were definitely what hooked me into liking this song when I first listened to it. Also, I must say, the voice actress did a phenomenal job. Between the dialogue midway through the song, the twisted and eerie laughter, and all of the screams, this is probably my favorite performance in this whole mod. The instrumental is nothing to sneeze at either. It's another excellent usage of the Super Mario World sound font, but here it carries that feeling of doom, as if any sense of innocence has been completely stuffed out, with all that remains is this dread of an ever-present danger. The key change near the end is awesome. I love how furious Peach sounds at this point, and combined with how the surrounding area begins to break and fall apart, it allows that hectic intensity of the song to be pushed even further. I will admit, the screaming does become a smidge obnoxious at this point, but it's not a huge issue for me. A bigger problem that I do have with this track is its pacing. Dark Forest as a whole feels too quick. Sure, it's over 2 minutes, but over half of that length is spent in the opening setting. The cabin segment is only 2 turns long, and the ending stretch doesn't even last for half a minute. It just comes across as if the song is just going through the motions, which kind of undersells the tone that it's going for. Don't get me wrong though, the Dark Forest we have now is still amazing and grossly underrated, but I know there's still a good amount of potential that this track has that could make it ever so slightly better. And here we are, the top 10. And kicking off the final stretch is Promotion. This one's just too good, man. Starting off the first phase, this whole section with Promotion Mario is just a vibe. The melodies are an absolute bop that I always find myself grooving to whenever this pops up in my shuffle. I adore Mario's chromatic. It sounds so happy and charming, and the way he hits those high notes is oh so satisfying. It creates this inviting feeling, as if he wants you to have the time of your life. The N64 sound fonts in the instrumental really help make the song sound like something Nintendo would make for one of their presentations or showcases. The way that fun energy of the song slowly dies down once Mario sees Luigi drowning is a nice small detail, creating this unease that's basically telling you that something clearly isn't right. And then comes the second phase with Stanley. Practically everything about this part fits the character to the T. The melodies become so much more sporadic, as if he's seemingly snapping and lashing out in frustration due to harming yet another person after once again losing control of his own powers. His chromatic, while the same as Promotion Mario's, does a great job at expressing his pained emotions, especially with the way his voice bends and slides throughout this segment. The instrumental is, well, to be frank, it's the weakest aspect of this section. It's not bad or anything, far from it. It's just that, aside from that piano, there's not much to it that I find noteworthy. All in all, Promotion is a very strong song that pays great homage to the Analog Horror series' most prominent character, while also being an utter blast of a track to listen to.
Mario 64 is the scariest game ever made.
I know both this list and my top 400 make it look like Promotion had a chance at being my favorite song from Classified Castle, but no, Abandon just wins. This is, without a shadow of doubt, my favorite Mario 64 related song in all of FNF. Starting off with the opening portion, Classified Luigi's chromatic is great. It's similar to how I like Coronation Day Peach's vocals, where they sound like their respective character's voice, but more hollowed out and dead, an empty shell being all that remains. The melodies are really cool, having a bit of an unpredictable nature to them. They start off slow and unassuming before becoming faster and almost hostile, as if they're portraying Luigi as some twisted spirit that is currently residing over his resting place, and BF is disrupting his peace and solitude, so he resorts to acting as an aggressor. This instrumental is phenomenal. It's easily my favorite usage of the N64 sound font in any mod, bar none. I love how it implements instruments from both Wet Dry World and Jolly Roger Bay, making it sound so mysterious and alien, befitting both this character and the Classified Analog series as a whole. Also, I love how you can hear a rendition of the Metal Mario theme being suddenly played in the background. I love that song to death, so hearing it here was awesome. And then we get to the first underwater portion. While I don't like how sudden the tempo change is, I will admit the slower rhythms are so serene and trance-like that I can't help but sway from side to side whenever I get to this point in the song. I love how both the vocals and the instruments sound like they're being submerged in this part, and unlike Thalassophobia, the effect doesn't soften the impact of the track due to how the melodies have a much calmer vibe to them. The song doesn't stay like this for long though, as after Luigi jump scares you, we get into when it switches into the N64 art style, and yeah, this whole section is just immaculate. It takes everything I love about the opening and makes it even better. The way the instrumental sounds as it starts backs up just tickles my brain in all the right ways. And then those flutes from the original game's menu theme chiming in, ooh, it's so good. The duets between both characters are hauntingly beautiful. The performance during this part has this sort of emotional weight to it, like it's carrying this feeling that you're nearing the end of an adventure, which makes sense considering how this is the third to last song in the main campaign. The key change is pretty good as well. It's essentially a reprisal of the beginning portion, with the tension of the song being much greater than ever before, perfectly matching with how the water has risen to an all-time high, and you're in dire need to lower it as fast as possible. We then get to one last submerged section to close out the song, and surprise surprise, it's really good. While I do wish it was a turn or two longer, I'm always going to appreciate hearing that iconic Jolly Roger Bay motif, no matter how eerie and twisted it sounds here. I adore how the instrumental fade-out has this tinge of sadness to it, a perfect nod to the tragedy that is the fate of all those who have fallen victim to Stanley's powers. While Abandon may not have the most flair and standout moments like so many other tracks during the endgame portion of this mod, it has one of the best blends of Mario and horror elements from this OST, thus making it the easy highlight of Classified Castle, and by far the best song for the Elder horror brew that this community has to offer.
In bed with another man, he was fucking while Luigi doing loads of graphics war.
In my previous ranking, I mentioned how the original I Hate You lacked something that would make me like it and want to come back to it during my free time. For a long while after the release of version 1, I could never put my finger on what that thing was. Eventually, I did figure out what was wrong. Not enough intensity. While the track had a decent amount of power and energy to it, there was never enough potency for it to truly be the driving force of the track. It felt more like the song was just filling in the empty space. In other words, it was essentially all bark, no bite. But then came the release of version 2, and with it, a remaster which fixes that problem and then some. I Hate You version 2. I am genuinely shocked at how much of a glow up this got, even though it didn't even get any drastic changes. So what exactly did this song do that made me now like it? Simple, they improved the instrumental. It was already good in V1, but the inclusion of a rock guitar makes it so much stronger. This, along with the Super Mario World sound fonts carrying that more serious and emotional tone from Oh God No, really captures that sense of fury and hatred that is currently boiling inside of Luigi. The way it starts up during the intro alone was enough to blow my expectations out of the water. And speaking of I Hate You Luigi, every single issue I had with his chromatic in the Legacy version is completely fixed. His vocals no longer cut off at the end of every note, and the big crush is nowhere near as obtrusive as before, finally allowing the anger in his voice to be fully fleshed out. These things, combined with the really catchy melodies that were kept the same as version 1's, creates this glorious headbanger of a song. All in all, the new I Hate You is nothing to scoff at. Despite the track taking many things from his Legacy counterpart instead of having a full rework like with It's a Me or Alone, this remaster still managed to fix every single problem I had with its predecessor. While yes, it is a bit on the shorter side, this song still takes every opportunity it can with its runtime, being this huge surge of adrenaline the whole way through. And the crazy thing is, there is still one more updated song we have yet to talk about. Don't worry, we will get there eventually.
I am already in your head.
Just a quick reminder, we have already gone through all the songs in Irregularity Isle, Wonderland of Lies, and Classified Castle. Meanwhile, Paranoia is only the third track out of the 6 from Hellish Heights to have shown up on this list so far. Have I made it clear yet how much I really like this world? Anyway, Paranoia isn't just a song, it's a performance. One filled with twists and turns, shocks and thrills alike! Starting with the beginning portion of the track, the way the melodies constantly switch between slides and faster rhythms gives each singing part this dramatic flair that is very much in line with Mr. Virtual's character. Speaking of whom, I love his chromatic. It sounds so human, but oozes of this malicious intent, making him come across as this complete and utter monster. I love how the opening instrumental encapsulates everything about the rest of the song in just the first 45 seconds, almost like it's this twisted prelude, existing to properly lead into the main act. I love how after this opener, the usage of the 8-bit style instruments creates this mysterious, arcade-like vibe, setting the stage for what appears to be a simple, innocent bout between BF and this oddball performer. But then comes a troubling revelation, a tragic twist to this story. A horrific version of GF suddenly appears, completely stealing the show as she sings her heart out, and the way BF hits those high notes in response perfectly shows his utter shock at whatever cruel fate has befallen his lover. I adore how you can hear Mr. Virtual's chromatic layer beneath Girlfriends, giving her melodies a great amount of range. The instrumental completely ditches the 8-bit style in favor of this hard-hitting supersonic synth, almost sounding like it's screaming out if it's paralleling the force behind the vocal melodies. All of these things work in tandem with one another to expertly sell the gravitas of this scene. If only this part lasted a little bit longer. Anyway, Mr. Virtual reappears once more, and the song's energy begins to slowly die down, acting as this excellent interlude between the two main events of the track. The 8-bit style instruments try creeping back into the song as if it's trying to save face, but to no avail, as it gets smothered by this glorious rock guitar. It shows how V has already revealed his true colors and real intentions, and there is no turning back. And now, it's time for the encore! The song's intensity makes its grand return, hitting like a ton of bricks, as everything, melodies, vocals, and instruments reach their ultimate climax, leaving BF completely overwhelmed during this jaw-dropping, head-banging, hype-inducing final beat drop. If only, once again, this part lasted a little bit longer. The song then concludes with the return of the 8-bit style instrumental, while the two characters sing a reprise of the track's opener, being the perfect cap-off for such a marvelous performance. Like I said, Paranoia is something else entirely. It deserves all the flowers it can get for pulling out all the stops in order to create such a grandiose production, one befitting for an entertainer like Mr. Virtual. It's no surprise why this is commonly considered to be the showstopper of Mario's madness. The only reason I don't share that same sentiment myself is simply because I believe the remaining songs on this list are that much more of a spectacle to behold.
Yay! I'm gonna go on an adventure!
It is a genuine crime how underappreciated Day Out is. When it comes to the songs in Content Cosmos, I rarely see people bring this one up in conversation. It's always these two instead. Anyway, back on the subject of Day Out, there is so much I enjoy about this track. To start, this instrumental is perfect. That jazz piano not only sounds incredible, but it creates this urban aesthetic that is perfectly in line with the song's current setting. The chiptune of course gives it that good old Mario flavor, but I especially love how the Super Mario World sound fonts play nearly all the same melodies that the main characters sing, and unlike some other FNF songs like Flames, it's subtle enough to where it doesn't become obtrusive or messy sounding. And speaking of the characters, the chromatics for both of the Mario brothers fit their respective personalities from the original animation to the T. I love how bored Mario sounds throughout this song, greatly reflecting his doesn't give a fuck attitude. As for his brother, I love how he resembles Luigi, but has this pitch to it that makes him sound both timid and childlike. But the melodies are by far the crown jewel of this song. All because of one particular reason. It's swing, baby! There is not a single moment in this track where I don't feel like dancing in my seat. It's that good. The duets are incredibly addicting. The back and forth between all three characters creates this great flow of energy that remains consistent the whole way through. And even the dialogue between GF and Mario further carries the song's momentum as it transitions into the key change, which then proceeds to take everything I loved about Day Out and makes it even better. This track makes me so unbelievably happy and fills me with so much life anytime I'm listening to it. The only, and I mean only reason this isn't ranking any higher is because, compared to the stuff in the top 5, this one is far less grand in terms of its scope, as well as not having many standout moments like the others. Regardless, Day Out is the definition of a good time, and is the clear and easy winner for the best song in Content Cosmos.
Why'd you bring this kid?
'Cause my mom's a fucking idiot!
Are you serious right now, bro?
Picture this. You've been on a long and harrowing journey across so many twisted worlds, each of them containing their own number of horrors. You're currently in the home stretch of what is easily the harshest of these landscapes so far, but upon reaching the end, you find someone already waiting for you. It's Mario, but there's something off about him. Between the somber chiptune instrumental and the way his voice sounds so colorless and devoid of any innocence, there's no doubt about it. This is not the Plumber you know and love. This is an imposter, a false hero, if you will. The song begins to pick up its pace, and your suspicion then turns into dread as you realize something truly terrible is coming, and then you get the return of my original favorite Mario Horror Brew song, Power Down Version 2. Oh, it's as beautiful as the day I lost it. Actually, no, it's even better than before. Starting things off, MX is at his absolute best in this remaster. While his chromatic is no longer as guttural as it is in V1, it still has that deep pitch and power to it that make him feel like an overwhelming and imposing force that you don't want to mess with. The voice lines are a neat touch, and the delivery behind each of them is insanely well done. However, some of these do feel like a last-minute addition, made worse by the fact that a majority of them not only get reused in Demise, but also fit way better in that song. On to the melodies. Similarly to other remasters like I Hate You and Golden Land, this one takes a lot from its legacy counterpart, which means they still exude a lot of menace and tension that help make MX feel like a final boss. What's more, this version adds in some extra turns that are not only a bop, but further cement that feeling of overpowering intensity. And then there's the instrumental, which, to be frank, is the easy weakest part of the song. I like the way it uses the chiptune and it still carries that somber bleakness that I liked in V1, but there are moments where it devolves into sound effect spam. I'm assuming they did that to make the song sound energetic and livelier, but instead of incorporating the sounds in a creative way like in Shrouded, it feels like they were thrown together haphazardly without much thought beyond that. Anywho, all of these aspects come together for what is, once again, the best part of the song, the ending. Like its predecessor, the track winds down for what appears to be its lowest point, before MX says the ever-iconic "innocence doesn't get you far" line, and then he rips GF in half! The way BF sounds as he hits those godlike high notes, showing his utter terror at such a horrific sight, before he descends into pure panic during that final duet with MX. It is a beautifully twisted closure that perfectly sets up Demise, and it makes that feeling of danger that was being built up have a phenomenal payoff. Honestly, I could gush about this ending for literal hours, it's that incredible. Overall, while this song has some of my least favorite changes out of any remaster in this mod, it also has some amazing new additions that very much outshine the bad stuff. It may no longer hold the title of Best Mario Horror FNF Song anymore, but by God did it not go down without a fight. And that goes to show you just how immaculate these final 4 songs truly are.
Thanks. Have a good day. What the fuck?
Unbeatable. Literally no one should be surprised that it's this high. Well, then again, I'm sure there are some people that are shocked that this isn't in the top 3, let alone number 1 on this list. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore this one. However, I do have a couple problems with it. Problems that do make this track, in my honest opinion, one of my lowest S tiers out of any FNF song I've ranked. But we'll get there when we get there. To start things off, we have my third favorite phase of the song, Level 1 with Mr. Sis. He sounds absolutely amazing. I love how his chromatic gives him this condescending tone, like this challenge from BF is utterly beneath him. Also, I might as well mention this now, yes, I am aware that all of the opponent's vocals were made with the use of AI. Do I care? No. I am reasonable enough to understand how hard it is to make a chromatic scale with just the original commercial alone, and that it was only used just to overcome that hurdle and nothing more. That's how AI should be used, as a tool, not as a crutch. Anyway, back onto the song itself, I love how the instrumental not only has this arcade-like style to it, but it also gives off this feeling of facing down this final boss, one that you can't overcome with just brute force. Rather, you have to keep your wits and skills about if you want to surpass him. All of the melodies are incredibly catchy, doing an excellent job of easing you into the song while not going all out just yet. And of course, you can't talk about Unbeatable without mentioning the usage of the lines from the original commercial. The "You Can't Beat Us" line being recited to the beat of the song is not only super creative, but given just how much it's used throughout the track, it becomes incredibly addicting for me, to the point where I can't help but sing along with it whenever it shows up. Additionally, it's just a really fun taunt that gives a lot of personality to the characters. Eventually, Mr. Sis decides that enough is enough with this warm-up, and completely pulls out all the stops to the don't miss section. And man does it hit hard! The faster tempo makes the melodies even more of a headbanger, the duets pack a mean punch. Mr. Sis now sounds like he's having the time of his life as he forces you to play your absolute best. The instrumental perfectly reflects how the stakes of the song have been raised astronomically, and the inclusion of that laughter in the background just further drives the idea that the Nintendo employee is constantly mocking you. And once this glorious pop-off is over, we move on to what is easily my least favorite phase of this song. Level 2. Alright, positives first, I do very much like this instrumental. The arcade-style chiptune does an excellent job imitating the music from the original Duck Hunt, and of course, the inclusion of that game's sound effects is a simple yet welcome touch. The melodies, while not as catchy as they are in level 1, are still good enough to prompt me to bop my head to them, and that's not even mentioning how much of a banger the final 30 seconds are, when both the Duck Hunt dog and BF continuously pop off while columns of Smicks chant "You Can't Beat Us." Lastly, I just adore the creativity of having BF use his classic atonals, and then having the dog respond with them barking to the beat of the song. And now onto my two big problems with this part. For one, the pacing. Here's the thing, despite the fact that Unbeatable is a 10-minute long song, it's surprisingly paced very well for most of its runtime. Level 1 feels like 3 minutes, if not a little bit less, and levels 3 and 4 feel much shorter than they actually are. Level 2 on the other hand feels way longer than it really is, and that's mostly due to the two pauses. Like, the second pause of the reticle popping up is fine enough, I suppose, as it leads into my favorite part of the phase, but the first one is completely unnecessary, since the song just continues playing more of the same stuff from before. Like, when I saw this song for the first time and got to this part, I just went, oh, it's still going, huh? I think what also doesn't help is my second issue, that being the chromatic for the dog. It's quite easily my least favorite of the three. It's a very scratchy type of vocals, one that doesn't even have the staying power that the other two characters have, and his tonals, aside from the barking, are even worse. Due to them being taken from his line in the original commercial, which had a whispery kind of delivery, it leads to all of his notes not only sounding really raspy, but airy as well. This just leads to his section becoming very underwhelming compared to the rest of the track. Well, with what is by far the weakest section of Unbeatable out of the way, we can now move on to the most underrated phase in this track. Level 3. Now, I will admit, a huge reason why I love this level so much is most definitely due to Bowser bias. Considering just how huge this OST is, it is criminal that there are hardly any instances of Bowser or his music in this mod, especially since, as I said in my Infernal Bout ranking, the Koopa King's themes are some of my all-time favorite tracks in the Mario series. But then comes level 3 of Unbeatable, hearing my complaints, and bringing that iconic Bowser goodness in spades! And you know what? If you guys don't mind, I'm gonna take time to just geek out over this instrumental. In addition to various Mario sound effects, you got the Yoshi drum beats from Super Mario World, the bass and distortion guitar from Bowser's boss fight of the same game, the iconic snare and kick from his theme in Mario 64, a rendition of the castle theme from Super Mario Bros., followed by a rendition of Bowser's Rage stage from Wonder as the song gets more intense, before concluding with this combination of the organ from Ultimate Koopa and the pad sim from Bowser's Road. Hearing all of these references just makes me so happy. While I still don't think they should have held off on using more Bowser related stuff for this mod, this whole section easily makes up for it. The other aspects of this phase are nothing to sneeze at either. For one, Bowser's chromatic is weird, but it's the good kind of weird. It's essentially this interesting combination of being distorted, scratchy, and deep all at once, giving it enough force for it to actually stick into my mind. Then there's the melodies, which are honestly on the same level of catchiness as the singing parts in level 1, if not slightly better. Plus, I can't not love the part where BF and Bowser sing the main motif of the Koopa King's main theme from 64, while Lakitu's chant, "You can't beat us." It just gets me super pumped up. Speaking of which, I love how Bowser goes, "Beat us, not you," or "You beat, not us," throughout this part. It's a really fun variation on the iconic phrase that perfectly complements his character. And once level 3 is complete, we then get this really nice BF solo to round things out. I love how it feels like you finally come to the end of an adventure after enduring such a massive gauntlet with these characters. And with one last reprisal at the beginning turn, the song comes to a close. Is what I would say if it wasn't for the song's entire cast showing up again immediately afterwards. They've been boasting about being unbeatable for so long, and they're not gonna let some blue-haired twerp change that. And thus begins my favorite section of the song, Level 4. Starting off with Mr. Sis once more, the faster tempo combined with the melodies from level 1 not only sound incredible, but they cause the Nintendo employee to sound almost panicked, as if he's realizing that by underestimating BF, it allowed him to get this far. Duck Hunt section, while still a bit underwhelming due to the atonals, is nowhere near as egregious as it is in level 2, especially due to the faster speed and more panic tone complementing the scratchier chromatic. Bowser comes back with his amazing melodies, and once again, the quicker tempo does wonders for his part. That, combined with the many instruments from level 3, gives the song this intensity and energy that parallels greatly with Bowser's character and reputation as his big bad boss. The return of the Smicks and Lakitus during their respective parts do a great job acting as backing choruses, giving Duck Hunt Dog and Bowser the chance to go all out in order to stop BF. Speaking of whom, the rapper gets this solo bit that is nothing short of marvelous. Everyone talks about his performance during the beat drop in Dictator, but I hardly see anyone talk about this specific turn here. The way the instrumental uses N64 sound fonts as it swells up, sounding incredibly hopeful. It's almost like the song itself is going, "Wait a minute, he's actually doing it! He's actually beating them!" And then you have Mr. Sis and Duck Hunt Dog sounding absolutely flabbergasted at how BF was able to keep up for this long. So they try to throw him off by continually saying how they're Nintendo and can't be beaten, but Boyfriend just ignores them and continues to pop off without a care, which forces the two opponents to repeat the same turn in retaliation, with Bowser chiming in to say the iconic line, as if boosting the morale of his fellow co-workers, all while this combination of the previous level's instrumentals plays in the background. And then the way the entire cast recites the original commercial as a last-ditch effort, only for BF to respond with that one final note, is ice cold! It shows how he has nothing left to say to them. It shows how he has nothing left to prove to them, because at the end of the day, he was the one that was unstoppable. He was the one that was unsurpassable. And most importantly, he was the one that was unbeatable. Overall, even with the few issues that I had with it, Unbeatable is an experience unlike any other. I completely get the hype for this one. I can't think of a better candidate to cap off this glorious soundtrack than this song. And to think, we aren't even in the top 3 yet. words cannot describe just how stoked I was when I saw that DJ Halibut was in this mod. Considering how the original Anti-Piracy series is one of my all-time favorite Mario horror brews, you'd best believe that I had high expectations for this song. And boy did No Party deliver! To start off, this intro is incredible. The pairing of this slow series of long notes and how low Halibut's chromatic gets, in addition to this ominous sounding instrumental, not only perfectly imitates the host's original theme in the ARG, but also creates this tone that's essentially saying, you fucked around and now you're about to find out. And then the switch happens, completely subverting my expectations, and hits me with an absolute banger of a song. DJ Halibut's vocals now get to shine, and yeah, I know it's been said to death, but Juno did a phenomenal job voicing him. He sounds like he's having a blast as he subjugates you to this torment, carrying that showman energy that he's known and loved for. This instrumental, with its uses of things like a piano, xylophone, trumpets, and flutes, all of which are in that iconic Mario style, feels like something straight out of an actual Mario Party minigame, which, I mean, do I even need to elaborate on why that fits so well with the scenario? But the cherry on top? The melodies. The swing style is back at it again, being by far my favorite implementation of it in this whole mod. All of these elements combining to create this idea that you're stuck in this twisted game show, being forced to atone for your sins while everyone else gets to take great enjoyment from your suffering. There are so many stellar moments in this song, from the super impactful duets, the catchy back and forth that keeps the song's momentum at a constant high, the BF solo where his chromatic makes him sound like he is desperately pleading to be let out, to the ending with that electric guitar, adding this feeling of anxiety as you have to write out the word criminal. They're all just so addicting that I can't help but dance to every one of them. And no, I'm not referring to me dancing in my seat. I mean, this song actively compels me to get up and start jamming out to it. Only a handful of tracks from this community has ever made me feel that way. No Party just has it all. I can easily see why this is considered to be the fan favorite of Hellish Heights, without question. Although, it's not my favorite from this world. And I think the conversation as to why is long overdue. Friends, fellas, before we continue on, I just want to say thank you. Thank you all for joining me on this utter roller coaster of a journey. I appreciate everyone for sticking by me as I go through this absolute titan of a soundtrack for a mod that is near and dear to my heart. To say this was an experience unlike any other would be a huge understatement. And I know some of you are probably wondering that, given how positive I've been towards most of this OST, creating this list must have been really hard for me. And, admittedly, it was, for the most part at least. Anyone that has seen my top 400 would know that a majority of these tracks did place right next to each other in my big FNF list. I really wasn't kidding when I said that even the slightest pro or con I had with each of my favorites had a crucial effect on where it could end up. But, with that being said, when it comes to the top 2 of this mod, it wasn't even a contest. I knew from the very beginning that nothing else from this glorious catalog could even remotely compare to the sheer outstanding quality that make it this remaining duo of tracks. The 2 songs I've listened to the most out of this entire soundtrack, the 2 songs that immediately come to mind whenever someone mentions Mario's Madness V2, the 2 songs that I could have playing on loop for literal hours and never once get tired, it was less a question of who will make it into the final 2 spots, and more one where I asked, which one will take the silver medal, and which one will go home with the gold. So, with all of this in mind, I only have one thing left to say before I get into talking about the runner-up for the best song in Mario's Madness. You can cry, you can whine, you can get as angry as you want for me putting Overdue this high. I do not give a flying fuck. I love this song, and no one is gonna keep me from giving it the praise that it rightfully deserves. This opening alone was enough to tell me that this track was going to be something special. The way the super upbeat melodies and the instrumental create this innocent tone while still sounding like there's something off to it, before completely switching gears as the Mario Bros. 3 death jingle plays in the background. It is just a phenomenal intro that expertly reveals the grave peril you've now found yourself in. And the rest of the song is no slouch either. But before I get into the rest of this absolute masterpiece, I should get the elephant in the room out of the way first. Pico. Yeah, funnily enough, this is the first time I get to talk about him in one of these rankings. And, well, I'm gonna preface this now, I am not a Pico fan. Far from it, actually. In fact, for a long while, Overdue was the only song featuring this assassin that I've ever liked. The core thing that simply makes me not enjoy most of his music is that he constantly freestyles, and yes, I am aware that's what makes his tracks unique, but for me, I've always had a problem with it because it just boils down to one of three things. A, I simply don't care for his freestyling altogether, so I don't find the melodies interesting or enjoyable. B, I do end up enjoying the freestyling, however, the other aspects of the song simply don't have enough to complement it, thus making his singing parts the only good thing about the track. Or C, the freestyling just outright clashes with the rest of the song, thus making it a complete mess. And even though nowadays I do like a few more Pico songs, a majority of the time they just end up in one of those three pitfalls. So how exactly does Overdue manage to avoid this altogether? Simple, Pico doesn't freestyle for most of the song, rather he mimics what he hears. And I know a lot of people say that this makes the track sound empty because his atonals can't sing long notes, but I'm gonna be perfectly honest, aside from one specific turn, this issue is practically non-existent. First off, it's not like he's outright mimicking Mr. L's whole notes, contrary to what many people like to claim, and secondly, I dare say it adds to the overall tone of the song. The melodies make him sound hesitant, cautious if you will, as if he knows he's completely out of his depth and any mistake could spell his doom. It's a wonderful contrast to Mr. L, whose deep, scratchy chromatic makes him come across as this intimidating force, one with complete control over both this world and the current situation at hand. The instrumental further enforces this feeling. The combination of that eerie sounding piano, those chilling violins, that haunting choir chant, and subtle rock-like elements create such a tense atmosphere with this tinge of unpredictability. The way it dies down at one point, building up so much suspense, before returning with a slam as the stage transitions, is nothing short of immaculate. This uncertainty is what makes this song so tantalizing. It's intense, but not in the way where there's this overwhelming amount of pressure. Rather, there's this lingering sense of unease, forcing you to carry this feeling of dread, as if you did something wrong and now your actions are coming back to torment you. But then, the song takes a turn. The instrumental dies down once more, allowing the violins to take center stage, as the melodies cause Mr. L to sound almost remorseful. And then the Forgiven appears. His vocals are good, being a typical Mario chromatic, but one filled with immense pain and sorrow, serving as an excellent backing to Pico's atonals. The beginning melody of the song returns once more, reprised in a way that carries the emotion and weight that perfectly reflects the broken relationship between the two deceased plumbers. But soon enough, Mario disappears, and then we get one of my favorite segments in all of FNF. Every single aspect about this hallway section is just phenomenal. Mr. L is at his absolute best, sounding like this unsurpassable and ever-present danger, more so than at any other point in the song. Pico's freestyling actually complements the rest of the track, making him sound frantic, as if he knows this is his one and only chance to escape. And this instrumental? You have the violins and xylophone popping off without a care, the piano chiming in at certain points, the choir chanting the whole way through, and that fucking electric guitar that just shreds through the entire second half! It's just perfect! Everything about this ending is perfect! It takes everything I love about this song and takes it to the max! No, even further beyond! Look, You can have your Starman Slaughter, you can have your Dictator, you can have your Alone, your Promotion, your Bad Day, your Golden Land, your Unbeatable, your Power Down, your Nourishing Blood, your I Hate You, your No Party, your Oh God No, your Last Course, your Paranoia, your Demise, your Dark Forest, your Day Out, your Abandon, your It's-A-Me, your Mario Singing Game Rhythm 9. I will be here in my corner, appreciating this misunderstood, overhated, and overlooked gem of a song.
Well done. Very well done. I must say, I am impressed. You're a long way from home, aren't you? Tell me, why do you persist? No matter. All good things must come to an end. You broke our little deal, and I can't let that slide. And you fell right into my hands, thinking your path was clear, goalpost in sight. But no. Tell me, do you know what all of the creatures down there have in common? They're all in my game. They all belong to me. You cannot undo what has been started. Your feet will set in motion the moment you realize like a little cartridge. The both of you are my playthings now, and we're going to have so much fun. Come and face me, little rat. Your time has come.
All Stars. I know everybody has already said practically everything there is to this song, but now it's my turn, and I have much to talk about. Not only is this my favorite song in Mario's Madness, not only is this my favorite Mario Horror Brew song from this community, but at the time of this recording, this is up there as one of my top 10 favorite FNF songs of all time. So let's get into why, shall we? Starting off with my third favorite phase, we have a phenomenal opening in the form of Act 1. That beautiful piano that plays during the opening turn, in addition to those violins, really gives off this sense of finality, as if the track itself is telling you you've truly arrived at the end of your journey, with only one obstacle standing in your way. The subsequent combination of synths and that rock guitar then relayed this message that this final challenge is not going to be some pushover, and is planning to give you the fight of your life. Speaking of whom, Ultra M has one of my favorite chromatics in this whole mod. While sure, he may not have that same power in his voice like MX does, the deep pitch still gives off this imposing presence that expertly highlights how much of a threat he is in this song. And then there's Girlfriend. While this isn't my favorite take on her chromatic, I can't deny that it still gets the job done very well. She has a sweetness to her voice, which also contains a small tinge of determination, paralleling greatly with BF's confident attitude throughout this phase. Lastly, these melodies are just phenomenal. The references to Horror Mario's theme when the track begins to pop off act as this chilling reminder that the one who was there at the start of this perilous journey is now the one who intends to end it. And then you have the way BF and GF play off each other. Something that the song loves to do is chain melodies together, and man does it sound incredible anytime it happens. The way one character will repeat half of whatever Ultra M sings, while the other immediately follows suit and completes the rest of the turn actually really shows the chemistry these two lovebirds have, making them feel like this unstoppable force that can overcome anything as long as they're together. But then, Ultra M kidnaps girlfriend, and thus begins my second favorite phase of the song, Act 2 with Omega. To start, I love how the orchestral elements of Act 1's instrumental stand out a lot more here. Not only does it further enforce that climactic tone from before, but it gives the song this concert-like feel, thus complementing Omega's showman-esque personality. Speaking of whom, his chromatic is easily my favorite in this entire song. There's this poise to his voice that makes him come across as some sort of gentleman, all while having a sinister undertone layered beneath. This, combined with the various slides and the melodies, gives his entire section this dramatic flair that establishes how he's meant to be some sort of twisted performer. And that especially goes for those duets, because man, they sound way too smooth for their own good. And then we get the arrival of the Mario 64 DS trio. The chromatics are about what you expect. They all sound good. LG sounds like Luigi but more decrepit and evil. Wario is basically the same thing but sounds like Wario. And Yosh had no right going as hard as he did with his entrance. The way he hits those high notes sound heavenly. The chemistry between the three minions is perfect. The way they chain their melodies one after another before singing together in unison is incredible. It not only keeps the track's momentum at an all-time high, but it also creates this idea that they're trying to overwhelm BF with sheer numbers, keeping him preoccupied for as long as possible, and, well, that's exactly what happens. The song's energy dies down, and then we head into Act 3. An eerie piano breaks the silence in the instrumental, creating an uneasy atmosphere, as if it's saying that something has gone terribly wrong. And as the violins start chiming in, the realization hits you as this mangled version of GF appears in front of you. She died, and this time, she's not coming back. And when the instrumental does fully flesh itself out, it contains none of that hype from the previous two acts, and instead bears this hopeless feeling to it, a musical representation of BF's spirit completely breaking apart and crumbling to dust. Speaking of whom, the usage of him during his duet with GX is nothing short of pure mastery. The shakiness in his voice, combined with how he hits those high notes, along with how exasperated he sounds during the shorter rhythms, expertly conveys his sadness, as if he's calling out to his lover in a desperate plea to break free of Ultra M's grip, but all he gets in return is a response so cold and lifeless. It's as if all the sweetness in his former partner's voice was completely carved out. I will say, aside from this beautiful contrast that it creates, I don't care that much for GX's chromatic. It's basically if you took Girlfriend's regular chromatic and applied effects over it, and it makes her sound pretty raspy. I get what it's going for, and it does get the job done very well, but it's definitely the weakest aspect of this song, bar none. And then you have the lyrics. Scrumble did a marvelous job as Ultra M. It sounds like this haunting chant, telling Boyfriend to just give up and share the same fate as his lover, because, after all, he's already failed, so what's even the point in continuing? It serves as both a taunt and an overbearing pressure to an already distraught BF, the cherry on top for what is seemingly his lowest point yet. Now, admittedly, I don't care for the duet the two lovers have during this part. I get what it's going for, making Boyfriend have this mental breakdown while Ultra M takes further advantage of this, but musically speaking, the melodic structures of both the pop-off and the singing are so vastly different that they just completely clash for me, and so I can only focus on one and not the other instead of both at the same time. Well anyway, after what is easily the weakest segment of this song for me, we now move on to my favorite section, Act 4. The instrumental switches up once again, becoming a lot more hopeful, because, as Ultra M himself puts it, despite losing his beloved, despite now being alone, and despite his foe getting even stronger, BF is still here, ready to continue this fight. M sounds just as good as he did in Act 1, if not better, and with him comes the return of the awesome reference to Horror Mario's theme, but what makes his reprisal so interesting is Boyfriend. When he repeats that motif, it doesn't hit nearly as hard as it did back in the beginning, harkening back to this idea that with GF, there was nothing he couldn't surpass. But now that she's gone, victory is much less assured, and that uncertainty raises the stakes of this final act to the max. Regardless, the rapper still gives it his all, constantly duetting with M at nearly every opportunity. And then you have the arrival of the Mimics. Various past foes from your journey return once more, their vocals being subtly played underneath Ultra M's during all of his singing parts, revealing how he's not just one opponent, no, he is the combination of the entire Mario's Madness cast. Some people say that a couple of the chromatics are hard to hear, and while I can see that being an issue, it doesn't really affect me because I hear them all just fine. I love how the first half of this act, the melodies of each of the mimics are either structured in a way to where it can fit with their respective characters' tracks, or straight up reprises the motifs of those original songs. It's a really nice detail that I was guaranteed to love given how I am with references. But then, the song dies down yet again, and in the midst of all the chaos, BF takes his time to mourn what he lost. It looks like he's on the verge of giving up, especially given the seemingly insurmountable odds. But suddenly, his grief turns into pure rage. The way he sounds so defiant as he sings that one turn from It's a Me, not having an iota of fear or sadness in his voice, all while the chorus in the background is telling him to give up, but he still chooses to stand his ground. It is nothing short of remarkable. And then Ultra M returns once more, the mimics chaining their melodies together, further enforcing this idea that you're facing off against this legion of horror brews, but BF is able to match them step for step, beat for beat, note for note. The song builds and builds and builds and builds, swelling more and more of this final glorious duet, and then it's over. BF is killed. Now, granted, I don't like when songs cut themselves off like this, as it ruins the final payoff, but at least the usage of the Super Mario World Game Over theme allows the track's energy to settle down in a more proper fashion. In short, All-Stars is a spectacle to behold. It takes so many things that I loved about many of my favorite songs from this mod and combines them into what I consider to be an utter masterpiece. There are so many aspects and elements to this track that makes me adore it as much as I do, that had I chosen to go over them all, we would probably be here all day. It's just that good. Even with the few flaws I mentioned in this entry, they're not enough to keep this from being the #1 spot. If anything, all they really do is keep it from being any higher up in my top 10 list. As someone who is a writer first and foremost, I have always been a sucker for climactic songs, even more so for ones that are able to integrate story into their music, and this track is no exception. And yeah, I know this isn't the most riveting plot out there, but like it or not, in the scope of Mario's Madness, All-Stars is, and always will be, a perfect finale for this mod, and I am tired of pretending it's not. And so, that was Mario's Madness version 2. Yeah, it goes without saying that this mod is fantastic on all fronts. While it's not perfect, it is very close to being so. I mean, I think my tier list speaks for itself. Like, when was the last time I had an S tier, let alone 4 in one of these rankings? And even with the few blunders this mod had, the good stuff far outweighs the bad, it's not even a question. So yeah, I am very glad to have been able to talk in depth about this OST, especially with how much it means to me personally. And, most importantly, thank you for watching this long-awaited ranking. I know it took quite a bit of time for me to get this one out, more than it realistically should have taken me, so for that, I am incredibly sorry, and rest assured, I won't turn this into a habit of mine. I will try to get these out at a much more proficient rate, so long as I have the ability to do so. And yeah, with this ranking complete, that concludes the Mario's March Madness event. Is what I would say if it wasn't for a certain thing that happened during the final week of 2025. Yeah, so we're not actually done talking about Mario's Madness yet, because on December 25th of last year, the mod added in 2 new songs as part of the Christmas surprise update. At first, I thought about discussing these 2 tracks in their own separate video, kinda like an epilogue ranking for the Mario's March Madness event, but not only would that have been really anticlimactic, it would have just been a lot of unnecessary work for me. So instead, I decided, while I still have the chance, to just talk about them here in the form of a much smaller countdown, a mini ranking if you will. Why didn't I just add the new songs to the main list, you might be asking? Because I have finished the script months ago and would have gotten this video out a lot sooner had it not been for my audio files corrupting over and over again. But while I may act like a Scrooge towards the really unfortunate timing of this update, I honestly can't get mad at the Christmas surprise itself because, yeah, both of these songs are really good and I quite enjoy my time with each of them. So, with that in mind, grab a second set of snacks or some dessert, and, for one final time, let's go!
Okay, for old time's sake, kid. For old time's sake, kid.
While I do like both songs from this update, Salami is by far the weaker of the 2 tracks. It's not bad, far from it, but it's definitely a bit too tame for its own good. So much so that I'd say it's on the weaker end of my favorites from this OST. That being said, there are still a lot of things about this song that make it a blast to listen to. For starters, both Granddad and Somari sound just as good as they do in their respective songs, and I especially love how cheerful the latter character sounds when he hits those high notes. There are so many great details when it comes to this instrumental. I like how it uses both the Mario-style chiptune and the Sega Genesis sound font, all while including rips like "I'm not your daddy, I'm your grandpa," being a perfect blend of Nourishing Bloods and Singing Game Rhythm 9 styles. And not only that, the incorporation of sleigh bells give the song that festive flair, and the combination of that piano, violin, and woodblock during the quieter part of the song gives off this really cozy feeling you normally feel when it's the holidays. The melodies are, admittedly, the weakest part of the song for me. While I do very much enjoy the swing-like style, and the terms themselves are catchy enough for me to bop my head to them, they don't really exude enough of that fun energy both Nourishing Blood and Singing Game Rhythm 9 have. Additionally, I don't like this pause that occurs halfway into the track. I know it's trying to do something similar to what Somari's song did with its instrumental break, but not only does it barely stick with me, it just kills a lot of the energy Salami did have. I will say though, the singing parts do a good job at giving the 2 bootlegs a very nice amount of chemistry. In fact, this whole song feels like a reunion between 2 friends that haven't seen each other for years, but the moment they do meet up again, they're back to their old antics as if no time has passed. Overall, a B-tier song. A pretty simple track that is a bit lacking in some areas, but a fun time nonetheless.
Humbug.
Wahoo hoo hoo, the clear fan favorite of the update, and yeah, rightfully so. This track is just phenomenal. Between the super catchy melodies, the unique use of chromatics to convey a wide variety of emotions, and the way the instrumental is able to expertly juggle so many themes at once, this is basically just Salami but done 100 times better. The swing-like rhythms are super addicting to the point where I can't help but dance to this song without a care in the world, and the lack of any pauses or stops creates this amazing flow that makes every turn all the more enticing. The instrumental does a good job giving the track this Christmas-like atmosphere with the use of those chimes, while also incorporating these guitars to match the rock styles of It's a Me and Starman Slaughter. I adore how Super Horror Mario's chromatic is used here. He sounds so annoyed, as if he's completely unamused by the other 3 Horbrews and their shenanigans. Speaking of which, each one fits their respective spirits to the T. Coronation Day Peach sounds so happy and innocent, which is a genuinely impressive feat given how much of a haunting presence her voice gave in Dark Forest. And when MX shows up, the higher notes he hits causes him to sound super jolly, a complete switch up from his more fearsome portrayal in Power Down and Demise, and the added reference to Jingle Bell Rock is an inclusion I can't help but cherish. The way the chiptune elements of the instrumental come into more of a focus is a really cool detail that serves as a nice callback to the false hero and his origins. And then when I Hate You Luigi arrives, I love how the instruments become a tad somber as Super Mario World sound fonts are subtly played underneath. It is a flawless representation of the tonal shift that occurs when the Ghost of Christmas Future appears in the original story, all while keeping that fun vibe of the overall song. While Burnt Luigi doesn't have that same anger in his voice that he has in I Hate You, the roughness in his vocals still make him sound like a complete grouch, and the back and forth he has with Mario makes it sound like they're bickering to one another, as if neither character is in the mood of dealing with the other's BS. And then when all four Horror-Brews begin chaining their melodies with one another and start harmonizing together, while the instrumental combines elements from previous portions of the track, it just makes me so unbelievably happy. This whole song just oozes of so much personality and carries this wholesome charm that just warms my heart. S tier. Well done, Mario's Madness. Very well done. And so, that was Mario's Madness's Christmas Surprise Update, and here's my tier list with all 30 songs. Yeah, if this is the kind of quality we're getting for both the Resource and Deluxe updates, then color me very optimistic. And with those two songs out of the way, the Mario's March Madness event has officially concluded. For real this time. And yeah, I know it's well past March now, I've heard all the jokes, you don't need to remind me. Regardless, it was still very fun going through these mods that feature one of my favorite video game franchises. Would I do a sequel to this event in the future? Perhaps. There are definitely some Mario Horror-Brew mods that I'm open to checking out and making future rankings on, such as Antiverse, Evil Rumors, or Sunday Night Plumbing. And who knows, maybe by then, some of the mods that I talked about already will get updated, and if that's the case, I'd be happy to go over them again for the next event as well. Will it happen anytime soon? Definitely not. There are many other mods I have been eagerly waiting to talk about that aren't Mario horror related, so if I do decide to do another event like this, it would have to take place as early as sometime next year. Now, that being said, I do have some important news to discuss. I am going to be taking a bit of a break with ranking videos. As fun as it was doing the Mario's March Madness events, it was also very stressful and very time consuming. I mean hell, I've been working on these videos non-stop ever since I started production on the Infernal Bout ranking, and I'm just tired. I really want to focus on some of my other hobbies, as well as other aspects of my day-to-day life, so yeah, I'm going to be taking a break on these types of videos. However, that doesn't mean I will be completely inactive on this channel. I plan to make that Got Me Like edit for one of the songs in Versus FNAF 3 to commemorate me reaching 1,000 subscribers, and I also plan to release a few extra videos in the meantime, so stick around for that. And to those that are mostly just here for my ranking content, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you guys high and dry. In the next couple of days, I will be starting the polls for the top 500, and while that is going on, I will be working on finalizing that list so I can eventually get to work on that video. And once I do get around to making these kinds of rankings again, I will start working on the 1K subscriber special. I already know what mod I will be covering, and yeah, it's going to be a long one. But before I do that, there is one other mod I wish to do a ranking on first. An OST I have been dying to talk about ever since I started making these. One that might be even better than Mario's Madness. What mod is that exactly? Well, you guys will find out soon enough. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys next time.
This empty shell, this husk, this world, this empty hell, I wander through, my song rings true. The world is mad, and I am too, without you.